Today, we are talking about posing for wedding photographers, posing for your couples, not for you as a wedding photographer, but if you need more poses to use while taking photos, I got you.
These are my cinematic movements.
Keep waving. It's good stuff, man.
Welcome to today's video. Posing is stressful. It was one of the things that I struggled with definitely when I was first getting started, and it only was compounded even more by the fact that I was kind of uncomfortable interacting with couples. They were also an age difference, so I was 18, 19 when I was getting into wedding photography, and my couples were maybe 26, 27, and that might not seem like such a big deal, but that reverse age gap, when I felt like I was just in a completely different world than my couples, found it very difficult to relate. It's a topic for another time. This video is part of the 30 days of videos. If you're not subscribed here on YouTube, please subscribe and turn the bell on because new videos coming up every single day to the end of the month. These videos are all sponsored by Focal. The wait list has kind of absolutely exploded. So basically we began the month with a couple of slots available if you wanted to get a new website. Basically what Focal will do is they'll actually have a call with you and they will build your website based on your feedback, based on what you like, based on what you don't like. If you have a website, you can kind of model it after what you got going on now and fix all the things that you don't want, or you can just start completely new. It's up to you. And then it also comes with this amazing back-end system that will do all of your bookings, and it will collect payments through credit cards and all the things that you basically need. It's very much a turnkey solution for a wedding photography business. And in the month of January, if you put your name on the wait list, you actually there's a $935 setup fee, usually USD, so quite expensive, especially if you're outside of, I'm in Canada here, so it's well over $1,000 Canadian. And that fee is completely waived if you get on the wait list within January, and you will get a beautiful new website. They're releasing new slots for websites every single week, so make sure you're on the wait list in order to get that email. When you get that email, sign up for one of the calendar slots, and you're on your way to a brand new website. It is definitely something that I wish would have existed back when I was first getting into photography, simply for all of the things that you don't know about yet, or that you think you might have some comprehension on. Search engine optimization, for example, that there are so many things you can possibly know about it, and your Focal website just kind of does it all. So your content starts to rank very, very quickly. Head on over to the link in the description and get on the wait list before the end of January. If you're on that list before the end of January, that's when it closes off, and you are able to get it on that free setup offer and skip the $935 setup fee that you would have to pay had you signed up on February 1st. So get in there now. On to the posing video, posing for your couples, not posing for you as a photographer, posing for you as a photographer. Different video. We'll get to it another time, not within these 30 days. I think that posing starts before you actually get to the wedding day, which might sound a little bit weird. Most of my couples, when we're in the first meeting or first phone call or video call or whatever it might be, they usually bring up that they're not photo people or that they're not comfortable in front of the camera. And I use this as a moment to kind of defuse the scene or what they think that the problem might be. And I do reassure them that it is much easier than they think. I will tell them that maybe the engagement session will be a little bit weird. It's clearly the three of us going out to take photos. Wedding day, though, there is so much energy and emotion and just things going on that the photo session, they don't even really have to worry about it. It'll just come naturally. It's not a problem at all. If a couple is especially worried about posing or they're just really nervous about photos in general, one thing that I will recommend is that we do an engagement session for sure. 50% of my couples as of last year are doing them, 50% are not. And I am totally happy either way. But if somebody's really kind of uncertain and a little bit nervous, or maybe in the beginning, maybe it wasn't so much nervous about them, it was nervous about my skills. If I'm year 2 into the photography industry, the trust level for me isn't really, it's there enough maybe to book me, but it's not really going so far above and beyond that it relaxes all their fears. So they may want to do an engagement session based on that alone. And that's fine. I think in the beginning, the more engagement sessions you can do, the more actual real life experience you have with couples, which is better for you. Also, the more portfolio you generate. In the beginning, I was, maybe this goes against what other people would teach, but I was definitely happy to give away complimentary engagement sessions, or I would use that as a hook for me to advertise and bring people in. I would also offer up no strings attached engagement sessions as well, which meant essentially that I was selfishly building my portfolio, that if someone inquired and they fit kind of the vibe that I wanted to have in my portfolio, I'd creep them on Facebook Facebook or whatever. And if they fit that vibe and they were somebody that I really thought we would get along on the wedding day, I would actually offer them like, hey, like happy to do the try before you buy. I know I'm new. I don't have a huge portfolio yet. Let's go out, do a walk around. I'll give you 10 images. If you want the whole set of images, maybe there's an extra payment. And then after you see all the images, you can actually decide whether or not you book me for the wedding day. A bit of a risk on my part, but not really a risk, I guess, because I'm selfishly building my portfolio. So I want those couples. I want to get out there and be photographing my ideal couples. So it's definitely a good deal for the couple. They get a free engagement session. They get to build that trust before they actually pay me any money. And then selfishly for me, I get to build my business. I get to use those images in my portfolio. I get the hands-on couple experience where I actually go out and work with people that aren't used to being posed. Most of my couples, I think it's just fear of the unknown. Whenever they are nervous about the photo session, when they get out there, like most of them are just totally fine. There are some things, we'll talk about them in the video here, about when I actually get to a shoot and we're walking to that first location, a few of the things that I tell them and a few of the ways that I kind of take the posing off of myself. What I've discovered is that if I am very hands-on with posing, or if they're like, we're very uncomfortable, put us in positions, and they just like kind of stand like this and you have to like not move them physically, but you're like, yeah, put your left hand around the waist and then your right hand around the waist, but higher. And if you're posing people really heavily like that, they're going to expect that for the rest of the shoot. They're going to expect that on their wedding day. And my couples specifically, I guess, are a little bit more easygoing and a little bit more, they just kind of want natural photos of them being themselves in real life environments. If your couples are more maybe in that magazine posing setup and they know you're going to be bringing in lights and maybe a lighting assistant, that is totally a viable way to run a business. There are lots of couples out there looking for that style of experience. For me, my happy place is just going out for a walk and finding what we find, coming across some good light and some random locations that just work really well on that day. But if you are interested in maybe more of that kind of setup couple style posing, check out a dude named Jerry Gionis. He is in Las Vegas. He is one of obviously the best wedding photographers in the world, but he definitely leans a lot more on that side, that if he stepped into a room like this and he had just a single white wall, he could create a lot of amazing images and they would all feel very natural and also in a very kind of posed magazine way. Whereas you put me in front of a white wall studio backdrop, I can give you 10 minutes before my brain is just completely burnt out of ideas to do in front of a white wall. So a big thing for me is when I arrive. So we'll use the engagement session example. In your beginning stages as a wedding photographer, you're probably going to be shooting a lot of engagement sessions. So I arrive, I park my car, meet the couple. It's always awkward because you never know if it's the couple waiting in the car and they're kind of like looking out like, is it? And then if you have a big camera, they'll usually come out and they'll wave. That's kind of the thing that I noticed. If you're not in a sketchy place, just like have the camera out and your couple will kind of find you. And we'll exchange hellos. And then as we're walking to the first location, I don't want to meet and just like, hey, here's like the first stop right here. I want a little bit more of a warm up. So I'll find a parking lot that's maybe a 3 to 4 minute walk, 5 minutes, whatever, walk away from the first spot that I want to go. Or because I know we're coming back to those cars, I will kind of, if there's a first spot that I just discovered on the way, I'll kind of do a loop around and hit that on the way back to the cars. And in this walk, I'm talking to them about a number of things. One of those things is if something feels not natural to them, if it feels really unnatural and weird, don't do it. Just do things that feel natural. If you're struck with an idea or a thing that you want to do, if you just want to hold hands and just run, or you want to jump off a thing, like feel free to do whatever you want to do. I'm there to capture it. I'm quick. Like if you do things, I'm going to catch those in between moments. And that's kind of what I've trained to do. And even by just telling your couples that and giving them a little bit of autonomy, you will discover that they kind of create a lot of the posing for you, that you don't have to go in and you don't have to do too much, that you can actually just be part of the experience. I think that the most ideal, which is completely, I think, impossible most of the time, you get like 5 minutes at every hour shoot. You get like 5 minutes of this where your couple actually forgets that you're there doing photos and they are just themselves. And that is such a simple thing to say, but such a difficult space to get into. So you will find yourself in that space from time to time. You'll find couples that are just like, if you have an activity, if you're at a pub, you're having some beers, those are usually the moments that people are just a lot more relaxed and a lot more normal and actually themselves. So that's when they forget about the cameras. And that is one of, I would say, the benefits of a mirrorless camera as well. I'm recording on my R6 here, but basically when you have an R6 with one of these tiny lenses, this is the 50 1.8, you have a very small kit. You're not too intimidating. People are a little bit more relaxed around you very quickly. And if you're at that pub environment, you have a little camera here, you have great eye autofocus. You can just be kind of looking at the screen. You don't have to be completely hiding behind your lens and your camera. You can kind of be a little bit more involved in taking photos, and your camera's pretty quiet and they kind of literally forget that you're taking photos, and you can get some amazing images that way. So real life moments and getting people to actually live in their day rather than pulling them out of it and trying to set them up for photos will create better and easier reactions, and always be striving for that optimal point of the fact that your couple has actually forgotten that you're out there taking photos. And if you can get to that spot and you can get to that spot fast, you're going to notice that you're going to unlock a lot of really actual real moments and interactions that you would not be able to get by telling them to do specific poses. A few other things I talk about on that walk to the first location is to just be generally happy with one another, that if they're always smiling and kind of close together, getting people close together is also important. It's something that I typically am reminding my couples of throughout the engagement session or the wedding day. That in photography space, if your heads are so close together that your eyes can't actually focus on the person, you don't really see that in the photo, but you definitely see if people are spaced out this far, that all of a sudden doesn't really feel like that romantic of an image. So I'm always happy to err on the side of just people being a little bit too close together. So that's one of the things that I remind them of. I also remind them to move a little bit slower than they might if they're holding hands and walking. They don't got to speed walk towards me. They can take their time. We're in no rush to get anywhere. And then also I'll mention that if they're doing something weird, I'll let them know. I feel like that's another important thing, just to relax a little bit of the nerves and to, again, be giving your couples a little bit more autonomy when it comes to the shoot and taking a little bit of the pressure off of yourself. You can also be coaching them through things that will commonly happen. Say, for instance, it's a bride-groom wedding and the bride has flowers like this and she keeps kind of sticking her arms like right up against her sides. Just, again, like a little bit of space, maybe a little bit more length for arms. Stems kind of belly button height. And all of a sudden you've improved that photo quite a lot, especially from a side angle. If people are pinning their arms against themselves, their arms are just going to be bigger and they're just not going to like the photos as much. Whereas if you get a little bit of space, you move the elbows out a little bit, all of a sudden you're creating images that are a lot better. And also the fact that if you mention it beforehand, it's a lot less awkward. At least in my experience, is that if somebody's doing something like that in real life and you're like, hey, can you move your arms off your body? They do appreciate you saying that. But if you can put that idea in the head before they actually arrive at the location and start doing that, it's a little bit of a better thing. So again, that kind of pre-consult talk on the way to the first location is something that is key. You'll also just notice a lot of things that happen over and over again at weddings. For instance, when the guys are all together and you're trying to do photos with maybe 5 guys or whatever, or maybe family, everyone's wearing suit jackets. Everyone wants immediately to put their arms up like this around each other, and then their jackets flare up really weird. So if you can just kind of tell them that, like, if you're going to put your arms up around friends, like undo that top button so that your jacket's open, so it's just not so weird. But maybe better is to say, like, if it feels comfortable to you, like put arms around people a little bit lower, and also not have the creepy fingers. If you've ever seen the fingers kind of creeping, here we'll do an example. There's always like this just coming around the side of somebody. It's a little bit weird. Tell them to be aware of that. And rather than being the creepy fingers, you can just kind of do that. Better image. Now let's move into some actual poses that I will do on a wedding day, or maybe not necessarily poses, but setups for poses and situations I will put people in order to kind of unlock those posed images. Number one, the first one that I usually step in for and kind of suggest, it could be a photo with family or maybe bridal party that's getting ready on that side. But typically the first time that I kind of step in and ask for a photo is some sort of photo of, if it is a bride-groom wedding, is the bride bringing down the dress. So usually the dress is hung somewhere for me to do some static photos of it. And I will typically leave it in that spot, and I'll just ask her to go over and just kind of like, either if it's way too high, sometimes hang it up in a spot that you need a chair to get. If it is too high, maybe it's just kind of come over and just like play with the dress or look at the dress. Or if it's reasonable, like come unhook it and bring it somewhere else. I feel like that's a good storytelling element as well as just a nice posed image. It's also something that I find ends up in pretty much every wedding album. When I was making wedding albums, every single wedding, I would say that image ended up in pretty much every single one of them. So I know that it's a valuable image that people also find value in. They like to have that photo, and it is one that if you're not aware of it or you're not the one kind of orchestrating it, that it might be forgotten. It might just not exist on the wedding day. Moving over to the guy's side, I do close-ups of watches and cufflinks and anything that could have potentially been a gift. Sometimes they'll tell you it's a gift, sometimes they won't. And then you'll find out when you actually deliver the gallery that like, oh, in fact, it was a gift, and can you find one photo of it? Make sure you get kind of photos of all the details of the day. I find that guys, it's also very easy that rather than doing like a smile and face the camera, they're going to feel really awkward, especially if you've just arrived and you have to like cue these shots because they're ready to go, or maybe you're running late or whatever it might be. If you can just actually get just the watches and the cufflinks in a shot, or just kind of hands doing things, adjusting bow ties, it's a little bit of a warm up that you're not just like camera right in the face, that you're actually camera near them, so they're getting comfortable with you, but not something that's going to make them feel uncomfortable right away. So that's one of the ways that I go into it. I also use these shots as storytelling, specifically when I'm doing videos as well. That this is one of the things that if I'm just there alone, that I'll make them do twice. Just like keep playing with stuff. Maybe sometimes I don't have to do it twice. They're just kind of like do the thing, and then I'll just grab some photos and videos of them doing that thing. But I also find that it's a good way to kind of pad out the guy's side if it is again bride groom wedding. Usually I'm going to have a lot more photos from the girls getting ready side. It's more of a thing going on there. Guys, sometimes that gallery section is a little bit light. By picking up these shots and doing family shots and maybe shots of the groom and some groomsmen or groom and bridal party, by doing all those photos, you kind of pad that out to at least give them a proper section and not just make it like 3 portraits and then moving on to the ceremony. And then beyond that, traditionally, getting ready spaces are challenging for photos, especially if they're hotels. Usually I do my best just to find a single window light and have them looking out that window light and looking back to me and using that as a main light. You could definitely bring in some flash power and make it happen that way, but I find you can usually find a window that has not too much going on in the background. Again, shooting everything pretty much at 1.8 or 1.4 or 1.2 in order to kind of really minimize the depth of field, in order to kind of clean up that background and make the image look lot prettier. Now moving into first looks, I don't really pose anything in the first look. I guess I pose the setup. I guess this is maybe a common thread for a lot of the different ways that I pose, that I set things up and then I let something happen naturally within that. And I feel like those are the photos that I enjoy taking the most. So again, male-female wedding, usually what's going to happen is I'm going to have the guy standing somewhere facing off into usually the bad light in that direction. So I know when they turn around, if his bride comes up, taps him on the shoulder, stops a little bit short, tells him to turn around, that he's going to be turning into good light. I am always photographing his reaction first, and then usually doing a little semicircle and getting the bride's reaction shortly after that. If I have 2 photographers, awesome. I'll get the guy's reaction. My second will usually be on the other side, getting the girl's reaction. And I also find that I shoot this moment a lot with the 70-200. I want to be back out of the scene. I would love to shoot it with the 35, but if you're shooting it with the 35, this is a moment that I want them to actually just be the most themselves, that this is for them, that this isn't a photo moment. If I can be back in some trees or whatever with the 70-200, I feel a lot more comfortable with that. Also, usually if I do have a loud camera, I'll make my camera a little bit quieter in this moment, especially if it's outside in the shade. And I know there's going to be no issues if I do go silent shutter. I find that that's kind of the best way to get, I would say that a lot of the first look images end up being my favorites from the entire wedding day. Also for first look, if you're not familiar, I should have explained this first. First look is basically if a couple chooses to see each other before the ceremony, whether it is to like logistically be able to do photos before the ceremony, which is a possibility, or if they're just really nervous or one of them is very nervous and it would make them feel a little bit better just to have like a couple of minutes together before the ceremony. I would say maybe half my couples are kind of doing these, maybe more than half at this point. I should do a count of those this year, but I would say roughly kind of half in the past have chosen to do a first look, and that way we can get a lot of the family photos out of the way before the ceremony as well, so that once the ceremony begins, they can just be part of their wedding day. I don't have a preference. I don't push them one way or the other. I'm happy if they choose to do one or if they choose to not do one. It doesn't really bother me. Next up for poses, an easy one that you can cue is, I would say my number one go-to pose is just them holding hands. So just kind of side by side holding hands, easy shot, move together, put an arm around each other. Again, remind them no creepy fingers sneaking around the other side. And then I will usually have them hold hands again and then begin to walk towards me. Then I'll have them turn around and walk away. And then at some point, I'll usually have them holding hands and walking away and ask them to, or maybe one of them to turn around and face me or just kind of smile over their shoulder. You usually get a quick little look back, and it is a very easy photo moment. And you can get within that 35 seconds of photography, that's a lot of different variations that you can get very, very quickly. So again, I'm not really posing anything. I'm just kind of putting them into situations where I know that photos will naturally arise and that I'll be just fast enough to capture. Now, when they're walking towards me, I will typically be telling them to kind of look at each other or to smile at each other or maybe kiss on the cheek or try to kiss while walking if the dress allows that. And I will be taking a lot of photos throughout this process. Again, trying to get those kind of in-between moments that I don't, when they actually usually do the thing that I request, I don't usually like that moment the most as the moments leading up to it, or maybe the moments after it. So maybe it's something to think about. And if you're shooting mirrorless camera, you're going to take a lot of frames, and don't worry about that. I know at least on YouTube, people always try to make fun of me for like spraying and praying. It's like, no, like I want the actual good moment. This is a once in a lifetime thing. I want to get the correct moment. And if that means that I take an additional, I don't know, like 1,000 photos at a wedding that maybe I didn't need to take, like it's no big deal. Cameras so inexpensive now. If you're on the Z9, it's an electronic shutter, so you have no wear and tear on your camera if you're taking more frames than you need to. There's no more shutter burnout, and I don't know what that means for the Canon R1, but maybe that means also that there will be no mechanical shutter on the R1. Who knows? Another easy setup, and one of my favorites to do, is simply getting them either to practice their first dance in a space. Usually couples, they want to practice, especially if it's any sort of choreographed first dance. They are happy to give that a little run through if you find them a space, or you can just kind of ask them to do a little twirl. I feel like the more movement you can kind of show, especially in a wedding dress, the better. Especially kind of after dark, if you use a little bit of a slower shutter and you kind of get a little bit of movement in the dress, I think it looks really, really nice. Again, season taste. If you want those crisp images with off-camera lights, that by all means go and do that. I like kind of the way that maybe this specific image here lined up, that it is by no means a perfect image. It's windy, the lanterns are moving all over, but I am overall super happy with it. So again, I take the images that I like, and if you like something else, that's cool. Take the pieces you want from this video and apply them to what you do. A few other easy things: forehead kisses. Usually my couples will be like, that's so lame, I hate it. And then they'll actually have a natural laughing moment about it. And then they'll do the thing and it'll actually look nice. Remind whoever's doing the kissing to close their eyes. If they're like kissing and their eyes are wide open, it's always a weird photo. Close your eyes. I guess maybe that's the thing that you can kind of tell them on the way in. Whenever you're kissing, like, please close your eyes. Don't leave them open. It's very, very strange in photos. But the forehead kiss is always just an easy go-to that usually creates a few surrounding moments as well that do end up sometimes being the favorites. It's also a very easy thing to kind of call out, and also something that you can kind of reuse within, say, like an engagement session. If you ask them to do the same thing 2 or 3 times, it's not going to feel too repetitive. Where there are definitely some poses that if you're kind of cueing them, kind of feel like I feel like we're just doing the same thing in a bunch of different spots. And I do my best to keep things moving fast enough and with enough variety that that's not really a thought that people have throughout their shoot. If you're doing a longer shoot, or maybe there's lots of different wardrobe changes, I will repeat the same stuff. I think that that's fine. Don't use the same jokes. Find new jokes, but repeating the same poses a few times if there are different wardrobe changes or extreme landscape, or you're now inside at a bar when you started outside in a park. I don't really mind reusing things when I know that those go-to shots are going to work. Another easy one is to play with the veil, whether you're getting the veil kind of wrapped around them or you're getting somebody actually to do the whole wind thing with the veil. I kind of push against that one. I've done it so many times now that I feel like it's a little bit kind of on the cheesy side of things. But I will say, even though the process of it feels very, very cheesy, the resulting images usually look really, really good. So yeah, I guess one of the bummers of creating good looking work in a non-photojournalistic environment, that's just not a moment that's going to naturally happen. And you have to kind of maybe put out more hands-on than you usually would have to. And one last one, I guess. So moving outside of the couples session and maybe a little bit more into the wedding party, specifically for like family photos, I keep them as simple as possible. Everybody on one plane of focus, so I can get everybody nice and in focus. Or if there's a lot of people, maybe we do 2 or 3 lines, a few people behind. I keep those very, very simple. I'm not doing anything too creative. If a couple asks me to do creative things with the family, I'm totally down. But I would say most of my couples, they want those photos kind of done as fast as they can. They want everybody looking good, smiling, in good light. They don't need to see explosive creativity from that scene. When it comes to the bridal party, I will usually do kind of the same boring shots, as well as a few different variations. The one that I've discovered is the easiest to kind of set up, and one that a lot of my couples actually do want, is finding a spot that has a couple stools or maybe some chairs, setting all of those up and doing a little bit more of a formal pose. Usually you can kind of sense out if this is a shot that they might be interested in. Maybe they'll straight up tell you, or if everything's a little bit more formal or black tie, they might want a shot like this and they might just not know. So usually it's pretty easy. Set up a few chairs, get everybody together. This especially works well if you have a large wedding party. If it's just the couple and maybe a best man maid of honor style thing, you got 4 people, probably not going to work out. But if you have a lot of people and you're like, what do I do with all these people? I have like 18 human beings that I have to tell to be in a photo somehow. This is usually the easiest way to get a larger group shot. And this usually ends up being a lot of the wedding party's favorite shot as well. So easy to set up, easy to do. Everybody just look at the camera, be serious, and then you can get them to smile for one, look at each other. If everyone has drinks or whatever. You can do a cheers as well. A few different variations you can kind of do within that to get a lot of different feeling images very, very quickly. So that is all for the posing video. I hope that you took a few things from this. Again, there is no specific one way for posing to happen, that if you are a little bit more like me that wants these things to happen naturally, and in a perfect world, everything would just be photojournalism and you would just go and follow people around getting ice cream and running through a park. That'd be amazing, but unfortunately that doesn't really happen in real life, and you have to queue up some things and then document it as a photojournalist. I feel like that's kind of where I've fit in, but definitely having the skills and tools by somebody that is a little bit more of kind of that magazine style poser, maybe even going as far as to bring in a few additional off-camera lights to make it feel even more, I guess, produced, for lack of a better description. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's all about what couples you want to be photographing, and there's a pretty good chance that whoever your ideal couple is probably pretty similar to you, and it's probably a lot easier for you to go out and to, I guess, find the couples that are similar to you and to market towards them. I feel like overall it's going to make for a better life experience for you in wedding photography, whereas I guess I've definitely suffered from this. I feel like most of us suffer from this, that we see kind of those really high-end pose looking weddings and we try to chase those, and then it turns out to just not be the wedding experience that I would want to be doing every single weekend. I'm happy that I had that period of my life where I did a lot of those, but I am much happier just to be photographing couples that are just a lot more like myself, that just want to get married and they want to have some nice photos, and they don't want to have a 4.5 hour photo session in the middle of their wedding day. And that sounds perfect to me. Thank you so much for joining me here today on the posing video. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Happy to get back to you. If you have not yet signed up to the wait list on the Focal website, please go do that now before the end of January. So end of January, this deal no longer exists. You save the $935 USD setup fee. And if your name is on that wait list, you have access to that. They're releasing dates slowly while the team can keep up. Small team over there, Focal. And they are custom building all these websites for you. A ridiculous offer, and I am surprised that they're offering it and that I asked and they were like, yeah, that sounds good. So yeah, head on over there, get the front end website. They build it for you. They have pro copywriters, professional people that will actually type words for you. You fill in your About Me section if you don't have one, or you have pieces of it, or they'll build out your packages. They'll write content for you. It's crazy. You also get the back end of the website where you can actually send out contracts and you can do payment requests from what appears to be a third party, which actually, in my experience as a more introverted, shy person, I always hated asking people for money. Now you can just kind of send that email and it comes from the Focal system. It doesn't feel like you're the one being like, send me my money, and you don't feel weird about the relationship after that. So really a lot of great things going on over there. If you are interested in growing your wedding photography business, it is a great place to be. I will be back in tomorrow for another video on wedding photography. Don't forget to subscribe and turn the bell on, and I'll see you again 24 hours from when this video went online. I don't know when you're watching it, but hopefully around then. See you tomorrow.